Loot boxes are becoming more and more stigmatized throughout the world, and more government officials are picking up on the fact that game companies are exploiting these gambling-like systems to prey on those vulnerable to these kinds of mechanics in order to gouge them for their money, essentially. And so we have seen countries like Belgium, Netherlands, Australia, the UK especially, the US, many more come out and say that, yeah, loot boxes are an issue that have to be tackled, even if the laws aren't there yet. Now, something has to be done. The laws have to be updated. This is a sentiment that's spreading more and more across more countries. And now, right here, we have Spain joining the fray. So this is information conveyed on the official Twitter page of Alberto Garzón, who is the Minister of Consumption, as it says right here, Ministro de Consumo del Gobierno de España. And he recently started talking about some of the regulations he wants to enact in order to combat online games with gambling-like elements. So in this tweet, he says, hoy hemos presentado las primeras medidas de Ministerio de Consumo sobre publicidad de juego online, un primer paso urgente para abordar los problemas de salud pública que pueden provocar los juegos de azar y las apuestas. So he says right here that we have presented the first measures in regards to publicity of online games that have these gambling-like elements. And so this whole Twitter thread is about wanting to prevent these kinds of games that are clearly not intended for kids from being promoted in certain conditions. And so this is what that's all about, the publicizing and the marketing of these online games and preventative measures on that front. But beyond that, Alberto Garzón tweeted this: También hemos informado que regularemos las loot boxes en los videojuegos, un sistema perverso que incita al consumo impulsivo de juegos de azar y puede estimular comportamientos como la ludopatía, especialmente entre menores. So he's saying right here that we've informed the public that we'll be regulating loot boxes in video games, a perverse system that incites the impulsive consumption in these games with the games of chance, games of gambling, which can further stimulate gambling behavior, especially in minors. And Alberto linked to this Business Insider article that further talks about the situation. The headline reads, El gobierno regulará las loot boxes de los videojuegos para evitar la ludopatía en menores de edad. So this means the government will regulate loot boxes in video games to prevent gambling in minors. And then scrolling down here, there are a couple bullet points that summarize what this article is all about. This reads, El ministro de Consumo abogará porque las loot boxes pueden regularse como cualquier otro juego de azar para evitar la ludopatía en menores. So this says the Minister of Consumption will advocate that loot boxes can be regulated as if they were gambling in order to prevent gambling-like behavior in minors. So treat loot boxes as if they were gambling is what the Minister of Consumption is saying here. This next bullet point then explains what loot boxes are. And then the final bullet point says, aunque su regulación es todavía muy joven en España, países de todo el mundo han comenzado a legislar sobre ellas debido a su probado fomento de la ludopatía en menores de edad. So this says that while loot box regulation is still young in Spain, many other countries have begun the process of regulating them due to their adverse effects on minors. And then the opening paragraph here talks once again about how the Minister of Consumption will take measures against the loot boxes in video games to prevent cases of gambling, especially for those who are most vulnerable to that kind of stuff, particularly minors. Then scrolling down here to this next paragraph, the Business Insider article explains how Alberto Garzón, the Minister of Consumption, opened the Commission of Health and Consumption with a new initiative, with a new sort of legislative framework that will act against gambling, particularly those found in video games. And through that, the intention is that the minister wants to treat loot boxes as if they were gambling and regulate them as you would regulate gambling. So yeah, just doing the logical thing here. And then here's a quote from Alberto Garzón, relayed to Business Insider. Las cajas de recompensa son una de las estrategias de las empresas de videojuegos para fidelizar al usuario, pero al coste de promover comportamientos de consumo compulsivo asociado del azar. So this translates to these boxes of rewards are strategies used by these video game companies to loyalize the player, the user, but at the cost of promoting these consumer behaviors that are compulsive associated with gambling that are very similar to slot machines. And then Alberto Garzón added by saying that these kinds of video games and these kinds of loot box purchases promote impulsive and compulsive consumption. And then right here we have an article from Spanish outlet El Diario. This article features a quote from El Cerebro de los Niños Explicado a los Padres, which is this editorial by Álvaro Bilbao, a neuropsychologist, and what he said echoes much of the sentiments expressed by research done by, a behavioral specialist in the UK and many other countries. He said, todos esos estímulos activan el sistema de recompensa del cerebro. All of those stimulants activate the rewards system in your brain, llamado núcleo accumbens, called nucleus accumbens. I don't know how to translate that. Consiguen que pongamos toda la atención en la actividad que los genera para poder volver a obtenerlos. So they make us put all of our attention in these activities that encourage these stimulations so that can be generated over and over again. Cuanto más pequeño es el niño, más sensible es a este tipo de estímulos, que son muy adictivos incluso para adultos. So the younger you are, the more sensitive you are to these types of stimuli, and these are very addictive, including for adults, not just children, but they're especially effective against kids. So this is one conclusion that a neuropsychologist in Spain came to, and it's a conclusion shared by researchers in the UK, researchers in the US. At this point, it is impossible for companies like Electronic Arts to pretend like these loot boxes are ethical, like they're just surprise mechanics and they're super fun and they're totally for kids, and that they're not gambling. The ESRB, the ESA, saying the same thing. At this point, just about everyone is presenting research that suggests otherwise, that loot boxes are correlated to gambling and that those activities reinforce each other. And then as part of that editorial, one of the things that Alvaro talked about was this scheme of giving a lot of rewards starting out, but then those rewards slowing down and then making them more random and less obtainable, reducing the probabilities the more you play the game, so that they get you hooked, they get you feeling what it's like to have all those rewards. And then when you get to a point where you're already addicted to that and you're not obtaining those rewards, you feel compelled to keep paying to earn those rewards and to keep reinforcing the chemicals that are released in your brain and the feeling of rush that comes with that. All that stuff just afflicts those who are susceptible to that kind of psychological manipulation. So beyond that, there's not much else to say about how exactly they intend to tackle loot boxes, but the fact of the matter is that the government and the Minister of Consumption are dead set on regulating loot boxes at some point in some way, shape, or form. It has been emphasized that loot box regulation in Spain is joven, is young, so, we're still in the initial stages, but the fact that we're seeing government bodies in Spain commit to loot box regulation is a big deal, especially given that this is happening in conjunction with a bunch of other countries like the UK and Belgium and Netherlands and Australia and whatnot, who have also expressed similar concerns. And this kind of snowballing will keep occurring until loot boxes are no longer viable for companies like Electronic Arts, Activision Blizzard, Bethesda, Take-Two, you name it. As loot boxes become more and more stigmatized, both from a legal perspective and from an optics perspective, companies will be forced to change their methods to not implement loot boxes due to the potential liabilities that could come with that. And that's why this is important, to see this kind of discussion happening and hopefully to eventually see this evolve to a point where game companies will be regulated and have some semblance of oversight, because they've proven over the years that without oversight, they are unable to act responsibly. Europe in particular is a region that has come down hard on loot boxes, and Spain now has joined the fray among many other countries in that continent. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this all develops, and I'm looking forward to the eradication of loot boxes, which have not only marred the gameplay integrity and game design and creative freedom of video games, they've also tangibly done psychological and financial damage to individuals and families alike. So yeah, there you have it, folks. That's everything you need to know about what's going on in Spain right now in regards to the government tackling online games with harmful gameplay and gambling-like systems, and them specifically mentioning loot boxes as something that is just despicable and something they really want to pin down. Let me know what your thoughts and opinions are on this whole situation, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.